Good morning and welcome to the next episode of Overcoming Self-Doubt. I'm Linda Chung and this morning I'm joined by Heather Townsend. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning, Linda, and thank you so much for inviting me on. It's always good to talk to you.
Oh, it's fantastic to see you today. So to introduce Heather, it's quite a long list actually. I guess for people that don't know you, it's thinking about this journey from civil engineering into corporate life, Procter & Gamble, Tesco's, BDO, into becoming an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, so Financial Times Guide to Networking, How to Make a Partner and Still Have a Life, The Go-To Expert, many others, so best-selling author, and now founders of the Accountants Millionaires Club. What a journey, Heather.
Yes, I have the scars to prove it and the punctures along the way.
and I guess scars, bless you. One of the things that strikes me is how different each of those things are. So for many, that's multiple lives. The theme of self-doubt, has there been self-doubt as you take such dramatic steps, or has it been a straightforward journey for you?
So I don't think anything is straightforward. And I think if anybody tells you their journey is straightforward, they're either completely unaware or they're untruthful. And so I was the typical high achiever at school. You know, the only thing I've ever failed in my life is my cycling proficiency and my driving test 3 times. No, I failed twice, I passed those time. You know, to put it in perspective, the marks I got for school, they didn't go below an A. You know, I'm the 4 A's at A level. You know, they didn't do A star in my generation. 9 A's at GCSE, they didn't do A stars. I couldn't have done the 10th. I was limited to 9. You know, grade 8 flautist, grade 7 pianist, you know, all of this sort of stuff. Got into Oxford University. I'm your classic high achiever. I also think there's an element of I was the middle child. Now, my eldest brother was dyspraxic. So in many ways, I was the middle child, desperate for attention. You know, there's less than 3 years between my brothers in age, so we were born. So it was a bit of a chaotic childhood. There's a classic middle child desperate for attention. There's also a classic, almost older child of this is what we're going to do and how we do it, because there was a space in many ways left by my brother there for it. So it's not quite, there's some stuff there, but I realised later, and I know I have a massive emotional trigger, and it's probably, everybody has emotional triggers, but this is the one that I'm really aware of, is that I have a theme that's run through my life. It's changed slightly since running my own business, of being absolutely petrified of losing my job. And that came about because, you know, I was born December 75. So in the years where I really knew what was going on, we had incredibly high interest rates. My dad, I hadn't realised because I was too young, had started his own business, and then that hadn't worked out. And so I think financially, my parents were always trying to regain their footing from that. Because there was 3 of us, my mother was working part-time, and there were lots and lots of cuts and all of that stuff. And it was always the part-time teacher that was cut. And so I had this massive, massive trigger about, you know, money was very tight when I was young. I saw my mother being made redundant time and time again. And I think that stayed with me. And so a lot of my journey, there's been these massive triggers around worry about losing my job. Now, I think a lot of people that were my age, that were female, that were bright, very much the lesson that we got taught at school was if you work hard, good things will happen to you in your life. You'll get a good job, you'll have a nice house, you'll, you know, whatever. And I think there's really an ethos amongst my generation of if you work hard, everything will be fine. And, you know, as a result of that, I think, I know this is about self-doubt and it can manifest it in certain ways, but I'm one of those people, and I've only really realised in the last 5-6 years that a key feature of my life is I've been driven by fear. Okay. And, you know, when you're motivated, if you're driven by fear, you can never quite be your best self because you're always trying to be somebody else. You're always trying to fit in. And I think that's one of the things that I just couldn't understand. It's led to a lot of me questioning who am I, why am I, who am I, which we'd characterize as self-doubt, wouldn't we? And you take somebody who's straight A's at A level, you take somebody that goes to Oxford, they get a 2-1. They had no right to get a 2-1. You know, we talked about the fact that I got a 2-1 in a subject that actually I have some mild learning difficulties that should have counted against me. And so there's an element here that so many of my peers, by the time they were 30, were knocking on the door of C-suite. And I couldn't understand what it was that I didn't have. You know, I tried my hardest to work hard. But by the time I left corporate life, I'd been made redundant twice and sacked twice. That didn't help the whole emotional trigger of I'm worried about losing my job.
But you clearly got over it each time and dealt with the next situation.
Yeah, and I think there's an angle of I'm incredibly resilient. And I've always been incredibly resilient. So this emotional trigger of you might not be able to put food on your table, you might lose your job, means I bounce back incredibly quickly. And so on the one hand, it's positive. I'm also, I know, you know, people go, what's your why in life? And there's some people with some grand things about world peace. There's some people with some grand stuff about leave a legacy. My why is I need a challenge.
Right.
You know, and it's a feature of my journey, the fact that I can turn around and I can say, this is who I am. Up until a certain point, I would have said what I thought people wanted to hear.
And liking a challenge, would you not say that's the flip of saying about fear of failure? So, because you said earlier, I'm driven by a fear of failure, and actually that's not a good driver, but equally, you're very driven by wanting the next challenge.
Yeah, and I think this is, you know, people are human. Mm-hmm. So you can have both.
Absolutely.
You know, and almost one of the things about leaving corporate life was that it gave me that awareness of actually I'd been in a place of I need, I should, I have to. And the big shift about moving out of corporate life was that I went into a position of I choose.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, when the chips were down, when I had no choice but to survive, I found the inner strength to do it. And that's something that I'm incredibly good at, is bouncing back. And
sorry, Heather, I was going to ask you, are there tips that you can share in terms of resilience? You know, what enables you to bounce back? What creates that resilience?
I think one of the things that I've realized is when you look at the worst case scenario, and actually that really helps me right now. Mm-hmm. If I needed to, I could pick up 10 grand of business within a month. That's actually a very we have very low outgoings. We don't smoke. We don't, the house we've been in since 2007, 13 years. We did the extension 10 years ago. There is an innate, I am a natural leader. And I think one of the things about removing doubt from your life is actually by tuning into your talents. Tuning into, and of course I believe in growth, the growth mindset and the whole thing about neuroplasticity, that everybody can get there. It's just that sometimes you've got a density of neural pathways in your brain that you get there a lot quicker. And for me, I'm brilliant in a crisis.
Think about the principles you talked about in terms of building resilience. Some of that is being knowing you can cope with the worst that can happen. And part of that is built on giving yourself the, if you like, the luxury of choice. Building a life where things can be discretionary, that things can, you can cope if those discretionary elements are taken out.
Another way of building that resilience is to bring a very strong, trusted team around you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a few people that I will open up to. There aren't many, and that's I'm a natural introvert, and interestingly, this whole thing about overcoming doubt, I think, is really helped if you can be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
With this whole thing about needing to try and show that succeed. I love recognition. I love appreciation. I do like my moment in the spotlight. And I think there's a lot of, particularly being a woman, there's a lot of pressure for society that says you've got to act a certain way, that you've got to be a certain way. And, us women, we're not meant to be top of the tree. We're not meant to have an opinion. We're meant to be people pleasers. And a lot of my self-doubt over the years has been as a result of me either clashing against the stereotype of who I should be, or me trying to be the stereotype of who I should be. And that leads to a lot of self-doubt. And I think one of the best things to overcome self-doubt is acceptance about who you are, because so much of our doubt comes from trying to be somebody else.
And how can people get to that acceptance? Because I think it can look quite easy from the outside. Some of the things that you've just voiced, Heather, a lot of people wouldn't guess about you, but clearly you've dealt with it in different stages.
Yeah.
So
I think,
how do you get to that acceptance?
Well, the first thing is, with age comes wisdom. And there is something about turning 40 and you don't give a damn. And I know that's not the easy answer that people want. In the last 5 years, it might be more than, it's definitely over 3. So we're talking the last 3-4 years. I've got quite deep into meditation, and using the Headspace app, and following the philosophy of Andy Puddlecombe, and very much his core philosophy is about acceptance. Mm-hmm. And actually, that if you need to speed up this journey of acceptance of who you are, meditation, journaling is a great way to get into that. Also coaching. Who am I really? How am I at my best? A lot of overcoming that self-doubt is putting yourself into a position where you choose. And a lot of people, when you're in corporate life, you've got responsibilities, you've got the mortgage, you've got the team, you've got your status. And actually, a lot of what we think is unpalatable is, if we're prepared to accept that choice, that actually everything becomes easier.
Absolutely. And actually, why I sort of chortle that you saying I don't give a damn, that's part of it, is actually that is choice. Because a lot of the time, I think you mentioned about how sometimes from a gender perspective, you worry about what people think. People pleaser was the language you used. I guess there is a wisdom that does come with age that starts making you think, actually, how I'm responding to this is a choice. The fact that I'm concerned about how people are thinking about me, the fact that I'm concerned about how this is perceived, how I respond to that is a choice.
And I think a lot of overcoming this self-doubt and the double, the questioning of yourself and the unhelpful beating yourself up mentally is to go, do I have what I need in my life right now to be my best self? And actually you discover that jettisoning some of these relationships makes it a lot easier. Yeah, society says we've got to be friends with everyone. Society says we've got to be likable to everyone. Well, sadly, and I've come to terms with it, there will always be a certain bracket of people, luckily they're retiring now, who will struggle with the fact that I'm female. I've got the audacity to have opinions and call them out on where they're clearly not in the right place. And a lot of people can't cope with that. And I'm getting more content with, so what?
The reality is you don't need all of those people to be successful in what you do. I think that realization for some of the people I coach, where they're wanting to get the whole marketplace. You don't need the whole marketplace.
No.
You don't need to please every single person in it.
Yeah, and I think, and it's not what people want to hear. Self-doubt often is eradicated by the passing of time. But actually some of the ways to overcome it that really do work is this confronting the brutal reality. You know, what is actually happening? I have to say, minimizing social media also helps. I don't think social media is actually particularly good for people's mental health long term. And you know, which is ironic that we met through social media. We both made our names and reputation through social media when we left corporate life, which I do think is slightly ironic. You know, I used to do a massive amount of stuff on Twitter, and I'm coming round to the opinion that maybe I just need to drop it because I'm just not finding it fun anymore. It's just, it wasn't the Twitter that we once knew, was it? You know,
it has changed for sure. And I guess it is that thing of we have to look at each stage. As every stage evolves, how is this part of what we do? How does it tie in to the mix right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all too often we try and do too much. And my great belief is when you can really focus in on that magic area of where your passion meets your natural abilities, which meets something you can monetize. Now that could be a corporate life that you monetize it, where you can bring around people that can strengthen and complement your skills. So I look at my number 2, Lisa. Couldn't do the business without Lisa. You know, one of the things that I've considered is what happens if I had to strip right back. That strip right back still has Lisa in the picture. And part of this overcoming self-doubt is having people that strengthen you. So, you know, Lisa brings the order into my life. The worst thing I could do with Lisa is put her front, right and centre, because she'd hate that. Mm-hmm. And I know she'd hate that. And that when we go around the team getting people to talk about how do you feel about things or what are you like on a good day, she hates that coming into the limelight. I still make her do it because she's a team member, but I know that I go with Ashley first, who wears his heart on his sleeve. And, you know, we brought Ashley into the business because there was 3 of us, and standard females who've got kids, put her head down, work really hard, go, right, I can focus on the family now. We were missing the fun elements of the business. So we brought a Tigger into our business. We brought the heart and soul into our business. Occasionally we have to mop up his emotional when somebody's popped his balloon and he wants to cry in the corner. But, you know, we you know, he's great and we love him dearly. And I think part of what's helped my journey is bringing the right people around me, but also having an acceptance that sometimes people go out of your circle and that's okay. And if they don't want you in their circle, then that's giving you a strong message that they probably didn't value for who you are. And I think and I think potentially as a female, and you may have experienced this, we're meant to be the community builders. We're meant to be the people pleasers. We're meant to be the people that will sit there and chat nicely. And you think about a lot of how men do it, is they might have a slanging match and they go, all right then, and go and play football. And for them it's gone. Whereas often with the females is that this can linger. And I think this sabotages and can bring a lot of self-doubt. And I don't want to be more male because I embrace who I am. But I think it's a lot harder and it's a lot easier as a woman to fall into that self-doubt position. I don't know, what do you think about that?
I think the themes you focus on there is that awareness of self, whatever gender. You know, how aware am I of what I bring to the table and what do I need around me? You know, what are those people that should be brought into the circle to balance out whatever elements I may be missing and that I need in my day-to-day.
Yeah, and I want to almost move on to a bit of the more recent chapter. And 2 things collided. Was my business partner decided to semi-retire, and that brought out the whole Accountants Millionaires Club. I needed a challenge, and I knew I needed a challenge, and so there was a challenge to scale and grow. And actually 2 things have collided and almost it's put me in a place that I've never been before. And one of those is that fear of losing it all, because I've lost my job, of losing it all. Suddenly when your wage bill is higher than what you used to turn over on a month, that's very focusing. And that's also can be paralyzing. And that's led to a lot of self-doubt of knowing I want to grow the business, but this cautious, risk averse. You know, I was one of the few business owners that started lockdown with 3 months money in the bank, and that didn't include all the money I'd put aside for my VAT liabilities, for my corporation tax liabilities that I've been accruing. So if I deferred all of that, I had 6 months in the bank. I don't know many business owners that have that kind of level in there. You know, we always tell our clients that, you know, the contingency, you should have 3 months money that you could survive, and that doesn't include what your liabilities are. But we were probably, you know, that's so there's a real, as this has hit and as I've grown my business, it's brought more doubt into my life, because, you know, bring on someone on 40 grand of cost, you know, what can wipe out your profit margin. And it was a real jump. And how did I get over that? How do I start growing it and get over my fear that everything's going to come tumbling down? I have good people in my life that I trust and that tell me to stop being stupid and get over myself. There's the second thing of, I ask myself, how likely is this to happen? And then there's the third thing of, sod it, just give it a go. You know, that's my needing the challenge and look, just get on and do it. And that served me very well. Now, something that I think we have a responsibility to talk about is the second thing that sort of combined with this journey is I got to a certain age. I got perimenopausal. And for any males listening, this is not the time to switch off. This is the time to switch on and listen. For the first time in my life, I started suffering anxiety. You know, most people see me as the really confident person who puts herself out there, and that is who I am. But suddenly I was getting paralyzed by this anxiety. And it was these thoughts of, you know, I still get it, you know, and I have to work really hard to go, yeah, that's not based on reality. You know, flaxseed is my friend at the moment. You know, and I'm working really hard to reduce my sugar levels, to keep my stress levels down. Otherwise, I see this massive overwhelm of anxiety take over me. And I think we have to realize that sometimes being a woman, whether we like it or not, our moods and how we feel about ourselves are heavily influenced by our hormonal cycle, or as in my case, the fluctuating hormones. And I think it all starts from a place of awareness. So I've educated myself, you know, what is it that causes this? You know, how do I go there without going to the HRT route? I may still go the HRT route. And I think there's a point about going, this isn't me. Why isn't this me? You know, and, you know, I take the royal jelly every day, take a bit of maca powder to boost my mood, and flaxseed is part of my diet every single day. And actually keeping my sugar low, aiming to really work on self-care. And I think this is a massive thing for overcoming self-doubt, which we haven't gone into, is if you don't look after yourself, your mind will start to be the terrorist. And often we don't realize how much of that positivity, of that being in the best space, is driven by a healthy mind. You know, you wouldn't put crap petrol in a Ferrari. So why do we do that to ourselves? You know, a lot of the message I talk about is everything is easier when you've had a good night's sleep. You know,
and no more important time than now, right? With everything going on, with us being in the majority staying at home in the same space.
Yeah.
How do you create the space and time for yourself?
Yeah, and a good friend of mine said it really well. Is one of the things to do is put yourself 6, 12, 18 months in the future, go, actually, what is the likely reality? And then go, if I knew that now, what would I do differently? And I think that's, you know, I'm somebody that's basically saying, with what's going to happen to my corporate marketplace, with what I think is going to happen with social distancing, I don't think I'm going to leave the house for work purposes until 2021. Now, that's not me being negative. That's me accepting that until they've got a vaccine, or until herd immunity has gone through, people are not going to be willing to travel to do a face-to-face event. They're not going to be willing to meet up in large groups. So, you know, there's also an angle that as an asthmatic, I'm not sure I want to be on the tube right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's a certain amount of self-preservation coming in here. So it comes back to that theme again of self-awareness is key. You know, if I'm going to overcome whatever's happening to me, why has that happened? And I think that's a really understanding, why have I got into this position? You know, is it that I'm under stress? Is it that I'm not aligned to my purpose, my value, my vision? Is it that I'm being asked to play to my weaknesses? I've not brought the right team around me in order so I can play to my strengths. You know, I've always said, if I could have gone straight from trainee to director, I would have had an awesome corporate life. The stuff that makes me good now will accelerate my business because I now have the cash flow to bring people around me to do the business as usual.
Fascinating. I'm conscious of the time, Heather. It's been amazing having this chat with you today. And the themes that are strongly going around my mind are being prepared, being aware, know your skills, know your talents, know your passion, and make sure to apply them, whatever the situation. And the more difficult the situation, the more those themes come to the fore.
Yes. And now is the most important time to be doing all this stuff, when we've got external influences that none of us have ever had in our lives happening. You know, this isn't 2008 again, where you and I kind of started to meet. This is at a whole different level.
Yes. And let's build the resilience for this whole different level.
I hope if it just one person listens to this and finds their nugget, that's enough for me.
Well, that's brilliant thought to end on. Thank you so much for your time today, Heather. We'll speak again soon. Take care.
I'm sure we will. Thank you.